Is this thing on? Yes. I have interviewed porn stars, air hostesses, lawyers, actresses, but Aaron, I have to say this is the first time I'm chatting to a private equity bro, so, there's a first time for everything. Welcome. It's a great thing to be here with you. Today we're sitting down with Aaron D'Souza, one of the sharpest minds in strategy and value creation at RMBVentures. Aaron, you really have that amazing ability to zoom in and zoom out from a, very big picture, macro portfolio strategy level right into the ground level nitty gritties of what makes businesses tick and, essentially grow. And we've now been working together for a few months, mainly on a new ventures investment that is gallantly entering a new territory, which is extremely exciting. It's been such a pleasure for us to work with you and get to know you, because I feel like we just get each other. And that's why we wanted to chat to you today, to really learn more about how and why you've ended up doing what you do in the world of private capital, and also to chat about where and how and why our two very different worlds have intersected and how they complement one another so very well. And today, really, our focus is going to be on a value creation lever that is very much misunderstood, under-leveraged, and in some worse cases, completely dismissed entirely. A personal favorite subject of mine, brand. But before we get into any of the deep stuff, let's get into the juicy stuff. Who is Aaron, and how did you end up in the world of private equity? What's your journey to here?
Claire, thank you so much for having me. I think to your point, it's been a fantastic journey up until now. So really glad to be here and for this opportunity. Who am I? I think I'm just somebody who's really obsessed with solving problems. It really energizes me to be able to advise and help. At my very core, I'm a results-oriented person. I think being able to see outcomes, being able to see things improve and get better, I think really resonate with me a lot. If I think about that from a career standpoint and how it's led me to where I am today, I think my initial years in strategy consulting really helped me to understand how business leaders think and what are the right questions to ask. From there, I transitioned into banking, and that really helped me understand how money and capital flows. And then from there, that led me into the private equity space, where I think it all comes together really nicely. So you've got this concoction of relatively smaller businesses that need a lot of help and guidance and support in terms of their growth trajectories. But from my perspective, to your point, I enjoy being able to zoom out, being able to have that macro lens on businesses, help them to really dream about what's next, but then also deep dive and get into the nitty-gritty of what is the problem that needs to be solved. What are the opportunity sets that we can really help unlock and realize value? So that's something I'm really passionate about.
So on the subject of RMBVentures, we were speaking to someone at another fund who said recently that RMBVentures is the top of the mountain, which obviously is a wonderful reputation to have in market. Do you agree with that? And then why do you think people say that? What is different about the way that ventures tackles the value creation and private equity challenge of growth?
I would like to believe that we are at the top, and I would say it's largely driven by the fact that we live our purpose. Our purpose really is to empower people, teams, and businesses to unlock their full potential. And I think we do it in a way that is not imposing. It is influential in its nature and its approach. The fact that we also have a fantastic brand in RMB and the First Strand Group behind us is always is a large benefit, I would say. We have had a very long track record within the market of great returns and fantastic performance. And so that's really helped us build our brand as well within the private equity space. I think we're also humble enough to understand that we're not the experts in everything. So the approach that we've taken from a value creation standpoint really is that we leverage experts like yourselves, people who are specialized in very specific capabilities that are needed to solve these complex problems within organizations. And we have a number of these businesses and specialists that we can call on and tap into in order to help us along this journey. So we see this really as a partnership approach, one where we understand that we are transient investors. But the reality is that these businesses need to kind of outlive us. And so how do we empower these businesses, management teams, etc., to remain consistent in the way in which they grow, but also sustain themselves well beyond our investing years?
It's a beautiful mandate, actually, because what it speaks to is a desire to build companies that are going to be the backbone, sustained backbone of this country from a job creation perspective, an economic driver perspective. So it's a commendable purpose, and we most certainly see you living that out. I think you raised a very interesting point, which is something I've been wondering about, that tension, the push-pull between, Ventures has built, like you said, this amazing ecosystem of highly capable, highly specialized partners who can come in and lend certain skills and services to solve for the greater challenge of growth. You and your broader team are obviously highly proficient, strategic, value-oriented. So you've got this amazing value proposition to offer private equity-backed companies. So how do you manage the tension between being hands-on and knowing, there's a particular direction we want to be moving in, and then also respecting, backing the jockey and the management team? I kind of like to think about it like a parent who might say, I've given you everything I can for 18 years, go off into the world, do your thing, and then like shouts after them, but don't forget to wear your sun cream. Like how do you guys manage that tension?
It's funny that you used the analogy of a parent, because our philosophy really is that we want to back founders, CEOs, management teams to do what they do. And we are there to help them unlock further value. It's not about us coming in and trying to be in charge. There's definitely going to be tension if that's the approach, because it's like me coming into your house and telling you how to raise your kid, right? And these businesses are really they're like children to these founders and CEOs. They've nurtured them, they've helped them grow, they've seen them come to life from inception. And so what they're looking for really is a partner, some thought leadership maybe to help them and guide them along this journey, but without being prescriptive, without being dictatorial, I think, in the approach. And that doesn't mean to say that tension isn't a good thing. Healthy tension is a great thing, because it means that there are forces at play that really help you to make decisions that are good for the organization. These founders and CEOs have come to a private equity team because they now understand that they need help to make a step change. And so if there isn't that healthy tension, you're going to be doing much of the same that you did before, and really that's not going to result in anything new.
Absolutely. So how do you know when that step change has happened successfully? What do you look for to know, geez, we're on the right track here, we are moving the needle in the right direction?
I think that's a great question, because the easy answer is you see it in the numbers.
Right.
You see it in the income statement, you see something happening over a certain period of time. But really, it's the unspoken or the non-quantifiable stuff that's really the telling factors. And for me, those are things like, is the flywheel really in motion, right? Is the organization making decisions at a much better clip than what they were making before?
Sure.
And that should happen without us in the room as the shareholder or one of the shareholders. Really, is the organization having a renewed enthusiasm, similar to when it was a young fledgling and the entrepreneur was really pushing for growth, etc. You see that happen over an extended period of time, and then you realize, okay, a step change is now inevitable. And that for us is true value creation. And you can see it kind of materialize through customers, through employees, through various stakeholders that interact with this brand. It really becomes perceived within the market. And that's the hard part to quantify, but it's happening.
Private equity, I mean, Aaron, you'll know this very much from the trenches, is under significant pressure. There is extraordinary market volatility, geopolitical stuff going on, and really a demand for very fast, very big returns in increasingly shorter holding periods. And for us, it really does bring up the question of whether there is a point at which the industry starts to sacrifice long-term value for these shorter-term optics. Is there enough long-term thinking in private equity today?
To your point, I think the pressure for results is real. We can't get away from that. But to create true value, you need to have a long-term view of these businesses. And if it's done with the right intentions, there's a saying that goes, you can't cost cut your way to prosperity. And that's really what a short-term view on these on this would be, is really just extracting as opposed to building. And it's always easier to extract than to build. But if value creation is done with the right intention, I think it should be about building something that's sustainable, that's something that's value accretive over an extended period of time, rather than just trying to either extract value or preserve value. So certainly the pressure is something that we have to be cognizant of, but I think we need to resist the urge for the pursuit of short-term goals and really pursue the longer-term sustainable stuff.
How does brand fit into all of this, all of our discussions this morning? Can something as intangible, ephemeral, the feeling stuff, that soft stuff, can it really have as big a measurable impact on financial outcomes in private equity as what we believe that it can have?
I absolutely think so. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the value of the brand in a lot of instances, and this is backed by various pieces of research, I think, the value of the brand can be much higher than the actual tangible value of the business.
Right? That goodwill line item on
Absolutely.
the balance sheet.
Absolutely. In the case of companies on the S&P 500, for example, your intangible asset value is generally significantly higher than your tangible asset value, to the tune of 3 to 4 times.
Astounding.
So absolutely it can, but it's got to be approached in a non-tagline kind of way. Right?
Now you're talking my language. Yes.
It's got to be really embedded within the strategy of a business. I think it then will help shape the market's perception of your business, right? Because then it's lived. A lot of organizations, I feel, they use it as a logo or a tagline, they associate it to marketing, and it's so much more.
As people of the world of branding, a logo and a website and a brochure and these very tiny kind of touch points that the vast majority of people perceive to be brand is just the tip of the iceberg. It is a far more lateral and far-reaching element of value creation and a fundamental of every business, in my view.
No, absolutely. I think that if you think about brand as the story that you can tell, it becomes really powerful.
Absolutely.
Because people love stories, right? And that's really what they're buying. So at the end of the day, a good, strong brand, one that's well known, well understood, that has a very strong and compelling story, I think you can garner premium, which fundamentally affects your top line, right? It helps you create a competitive moat in a way that none of the other tangible stuff can. I think it's a fascinating concept and something that's really underleveraged
Big
in a
time.
private equity context, but across many businesses, and I feel like if it was done a lot better, you'd see a lot more inherent value across those businesses.
Most certainly. Talia and I are keeping a very beady eye on the developments happening at Bumble. So Bumble had its IPO in 2021, and since then its stock price has plummeted by about 90%. Investor confidence is at an all-time low. User engagement is at an all-time low, and I'm not just saying that because of what my friends say around the dinner table the dinner table. In March this year, the initial founder was actually brought back as CEO, and has been given a mandate to grow, regrow, rebuild shareholder value. And to go back to your point about story and the inherent value of story, she is now steering this company in a new direction towards self-love, based on the premise, that to love someone else, you've got to love yourself first. So to me, this is mind-boggling, is that a 3-letter story, love starts within, is the core lever, the pillar against which all other strategic decisions are going to be made in order to rescue Bumble. From product to tech to go to market, everything is going to be radically underpinned and influenced by those 3 words, which, to your point, is no more than a story. And for me, this is just such a brilliant example of a brand being used as a central value lever. And I mean, there's an awful lot of pressure on that brand to perform. But my goodness, if that founder hasn't done it once, and most certainly can do it again. So Aaron, why do you think private equity firms are not leveraging brand equity in a more meaningful and serious way?
Yeah, as an investor, you tend to anchor to what's tangible, right? The numbers generally are something that you deviate towards. You want to be able to see something that hits the income statement, hits the balance sheet, or are my customers growing? And you almost associate this concept of brand with something that's a little bit more fluffy in nature. So it's much harder to quantify. It's soft. But really there is an inherent value there that we need to leverage better and unlock. But I would say that's the reason it is under leveraged at this point in time. It's really hard to measure.
Now that's something that we have actually spoken about independently of the studio room as being something that we've got to crack, because it is the examples are just so many of companies that have pulled down on that brand equity value creation lever to astounding returns.
In that context, I mean, within our portfolio, we've got some very strong brands, household brands from a South African context. One particular one is Jojo Tanks. Now,
everyone knows a Jojo tank.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Jojo is that the term Jojo, the name Jojo, is actually associated with owning a water tank. So when people talk about Jojo tanks, they just say, I have a Jojo, which is almost like synonymous with owning a water tank.
Yes.
And the funny part about that is even if it's branded with a different company, they say it's a JoJo. And that's such a powerful kind of concept of
Yes.
brand value and how it's playing out within one of our portfolio companies.
Then boy, you have hit the lights out. So
Absolutely.
it's amazing to hear that such brand equity exists within the broader portfolio.
Yeah, I think some of the other stuff that we're working on together at the moment, we're really going to see how brand translates into some actual tangible value, specifically in the case of entering a new market and improving sales cycles, but then on other assets, probably in the context of exits. I think this the measure of multiple has an inherent amount of intangible value associated with that.
Most definitely.
That's the one part of the measurement framework that really lends itself towards the intangibles and the stuff that's about feeling and about story. And I feel like, and you change the multiple slightly, it has a massive impact on the value of the business.
We're talking big bucks.
Big bucks, exactly. So I'm really excited for what that has in store, and I'm even more excited to be on the journey with you guys in exploring this topic further. Yeah.
I spoke to a very senior private equity practitioner who said that investment is part science, to go back to your point about the tangibles, the balance sheet, the numbers, and it's part art, which really talks to an acknowledgement that sometimes it's about the good tummy feeling and just having that gut sense of this is something I just have to get behind. So, Aaron, how can portfolio companies leverage brand to really shoot the lights out when it comes to those financial outcomes, be it EBITDA growth, be it revenue expansion or exit multiples? I mean, this is a very big question, but kind of top level, how do you think portfolio companies can start doing that?
I really think it has to be driven from the top. I think it has to be a lived concept within your organization. I think it has to be embedded within the strategy of the company, and you have to. So if things like customer retention are important to you, if things like growth is important to you, then being able to tell your story and being able to perceive your brand in a certain way would certainly have an impact on those metrics. But it has to be something that you take seriously. It can't be a marketing exercise or trying to put lipstick on the organization, right? Because then you're just doing it for vanity purposes, and it's not really affecting the ethos of how you're approaching the true concept of brand.
In my previous life of startup, we spoke a lot about vanity metrics. So we applied for a number of accelerators with the startup and got into a fairly exciting one. But they always warned us against the difference between a vanity metric, the lipstick on a pig moment, versus real metrics of success. And inherently, those two are different things. So, Aaron, how do we move senior leaders, management teams, the real driving forces behind these portfolio companies, into a place of understanding and excitement behind leveraging brand? How do we shift their perception from brand equals a marketing campaign, or heaven forbid, brand equals 5 colors and a logo? How do we start to educate management about that?
I think you've got to get them to see that it's not about just being fluffy, right? And you've got to anchor it into something that then becomes measurable. You've got to show them how customers are changing their perceptions of the business, how employee satisfaction levels are increasing, how the brand is being perceived more broadly within the market, social media, etc. In today's world, you get almost instantaneous feedback, and you have access to instantaneous feedback, and I think we need to leverage that a lot more. So it's about taking a concept that is generally deemed to be non-core and associating it and anchoring it in something that is absolutely measurable. And that's how you draw the parallel between the two.
Especially, I guess, with, as we've come to know them, these CEOs and management teams who are operational and commercial weapons. They are just so whip smart and driven by the fundamentals of running a business.
Yeah, it's it definitely is a mind shift, you know, but the value of a brand really is in its story. Um, for us as PE practitioners, that's that's inherent across the entire life cycle of the investment, from when you are looking for a company to partner with, all the way through to creating value within that organization, and then getting a seller on the back end of that investment to really believe the story that you've helped craft over the course of your partnership.
Aaron, how would you go about measuring brand health in a portfolio company? Do you think that more could be done? Certainly in our relationship, more can be done collaboratively to almost do a bit of a category job on coming up with the rule book on how to really make smart, accurate assessments of brand value within portfolio companies at any stage of the investment horizon. Is that something that you think is possible?
You really have to measure both perception and performance, right? And the causal link between those two over an extended period of time. So, we've chatted about this. Really, you want to start early in the investment, and you want to keep tracking certain measures right across, to understand how things have changed, whether they've gotten better, whether they've gotten worse, and building around certain key metrics that you feel are important to that particular business, but then extracting that and saying, okay, holistically across sectors, across various business types, what are those key measures? And I think that can be formulated in some shape or form. I would love to be on a journey that helps facilitate one of the first kind of key measures or playbooks that allow us to do that more scientifically.
Brilliant. We are most certainly up for the challenge. Aaron, to start to kind of close out, I want to ask you some quick kind of rapid fire style questions. What is one myth about private equity that you would want busted here and now?
Wow. Um, I would say a lot of people think that you can just waltz into a business and start, because you're a shareholder, start doing whatever you think,
Calling the shots.
calling the shots. And really, what people don't see is the amount of time, energy, effort that's spent in the back, on alignment, on making sure that we are being influential, rather than being dictatorial. Um, because at the end of the day, it's a partnership. It's a partnership. It's a marriage for a very long period of time. And if you don't have those principles in place, I think uh, it's going to be a rough few years.
A rough match. Yeah. Aaron, once you make your millions, what's next? I'm guessing chess grandmaster. I'm guessing starting a gym, a very high end gym. What's next for you?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to put those on the back burner. With
With
my
your
injuries.
yes.
But I would say I'm really passionate about solving some wicked problems. Education is a real passion of mine, and I think it's an underpin uh, for economies to really start thriving. If you don't get that landscape right, I think you'll continue to struggle. I also want to be able to give back, not just from a charitable standpoint, but really uh, give my experience and my knowledge to businesses that are on their specific journeys, and hopefully that can help them accelerate a lot faster than they would traditionally.
What is one thing that every South African business owner who is looking to sell needs to be thinking about or hear right now?
I think within the context of the topic today, it's really to know your story. You know, the South African market is so volatile. It's so all over the place. There's so many things that can draw you back, and but being consistent in your story, being able to articulate that well to a potential shareholder, and showcase the value of that, of your brand and your company to both the external market. I think that's going to be a lever that you can pull at any point in time. And eventually, when we look to sell those businesses out into the market, we can expand on that story, and we can build on that story. But we have to first buy into your story as an entrepreneur, CEO, or founder before we make that investment.
Totally. And I suppose that comes back to our earlier discussion point around, yes, there are the tangible black and white balance sheet items. And then there's also a side serving of gut feeling. And does your story pull at my heartstrings? Does it resonate on some kind of emotional level that makes me choose you over the myriad other companies that are available for other targets, as it were?
Yeah, there's you mentioned something about art earlier. Investing really is very similar. There's going to be the hard, tangible stuff that you can see, but inherently the stuff that you want to invest in also needs to resonate with you and your philosophy. And sometimes, in fact, a lot of the time, it's about feeling, it's about relationships, it's about the stuff that's very hard to quantify and measure, but it's stuff that you perceive.
Yeah, and it's immensely exciting, isn't it, to be walking the tightrope between the ephemeral and the actual, and the feeling and the numbers,
Absolutely.
This really is, for me, the definition of what brand is. It's the way that one communicates a business, the story of that business, to every single stakeholder who might come into contact with the business, from external investors right down to the people who come in and clean the floors. The experience that human beings have on an emotional level of a business, that for me is brand.
Yeah.
Whatever about the colors and the logos, right? That's just a tiny part of things.
And to be honest with you, over the last few months that we've worked together, I think you guys have made that so much more apparent to me. The ability to do that, I think, and you guys do it fantastically. So I'm super excited that the continued partnership with you, and I'm hoping we can solve some really cool stuff as we go along.
Absolutely. Thank you. And maybe a few wicked problems
Absolutely.
while we're at it.
Absolutely.
Aaron, thank you. I mean, as always, chatting to you is energizing and fun, and I always learn so much. And I think what is refreshing, particularly in the context of private equity, is speaking about some of these, softer things, and being able to dig a little deeper beyond jargon and spreadsheets and balance sheets and trial balances and things, and get into that more ephemeral side of business.
I'm so looking forward to being able to say, through our partnership, we can fundamentally state with absolute clarity that this lever of brand becomes a differentiator for us as a private equity institution. That's something that I feel like would really elevate us even further up the mountain that you spoke
Listen,
about
well,
earlier.
you're at the top already, so where to from here? I mean, stratospheric, let's go intergalactic with it. Thank
Really
you,
looking forward
Aaron.
to that.
Amazing. If you are listening and you're a private equity partner, transactor, or strategist, let this episode really be your permission to rethink how you build and position and tell the stories, and then exit the companies that you back. As always, if anything has sparked something for you, connect with us at capitalconsulting.com or hit follow for more conversations just like this one.